All right, so here's going to be part 4 of the Hewing Block series. Apologies for the delay, but life happens. So this is the step where we're going to be boring and installing the legs. Now, to save a little bit of time, I've already completed a few steps here that are pretty self-explanatory. I've already made the legs, and these are riven out of the same ash tree that block is from. But you don't have to do it this way. You can actually take, they don't have to be riven. You can take a long, straight, say a sapling or a branch, and just trim it down, and it's already going to be round and probably a little bit easier for some people if you don't have the equipment to do a lot of heavy riving, or you don't have the material for that matter. So you can make the legs however you want. I used a shaving horse, obviously, to round these up. So that's my method. It's certainly a good way to do it, but you don't have to do it that way. You can just use sticks. And it is important, I think, in fact, to mention that you want the actual leg to be thicker than the tenon that's going to go into the hole. That way you can really drive it up pretty close to here, and you're not going to have a long, thin piece that's, you know, as the wood ages and dries out more, might start slipping up through, you know, through the top of the bench, because we are boring holes all the way through, which is how I typically make them. So just keep that in mind. But so that's my method. And as I say, I've already started the process here, because this is very laborious and takes a certain amount of time. But the way you want to do this, whether you're using a T-handled auger or you've made your own Scotch eye, you know, more modern auger, however you're boring the holes, you want to do the first one. You don't want to do all 4 at the same time. What you want to do is bore the first hole and then drive in your leg, and that way you can register the second hole to make it even. In other words, you can try to match, just eyeballing it, the cant and the angle, because these legs, they're splayed. You know, it's sticking out in an angle on both directions. It's not just out wide, it's splayed towards an angle. Anyway, so I've mostly bored all the way through this block here, but I'll go ahead and finish it up. Make sure we're focused. And as I say, this is quite a laborious process if you're doing it this way. That's got it. Yeah, there we go. Holes bored all the way through. We came pretty close. It's not perfect, but this isn't something that has to be perfect. We'll pull this out. See how we do. And I'll have something to note about these in a minute too. Let's see if I've got it trimmed down enough. Not quite. But we can go ahead and see. I'm gonna have to trim this one down a little bit more so it'll fit. But you can see pretty well. Yeah, that's quite close. Let's see. So I did use a little bit of a pencil line just to kind of line things up. So that's how you do that, and we'll do the other side the same way, where bore one, put a leg in, and then register off of that for the second hole. So I do have a bit of a note on antique T-handled augers, if you're going to be using one, or if you're trying to find one. All right. Well, it'll focus for me. this worm or this screw on the end is the single most important part about finding a good usable T-handled auger. If that is rusted out or missing or doesn't have good threading on it, these will not work. They absolutely just won't work, because that's what's screwing in and drawing the cutting edge into the wood. And this one's a little rough, but it's still pretty functional. And this is the Jennings style of twisted auger. You know, this is 1800s-ish. I don't know, probably later part of the 1800s. But it's okay if it's a little bit rusty, like this one is. You just don't want the worm to be rusty, or these just won't work. But if you're really wanting to go the traditional method and use one of these are pretty readily available at junk shops or antique malls or wherever you'd find old tools, because most people just use them as decoration. They're usually pretty cheap, honestly, and a lot of them do have the screw completely rusted out. So that's a note on those. But yeah, you know, and a lot of people might, in more recent times, might use, you know, you can go to Lowe's or a hardware store and just buy a very large, you know, modern auger that's more of the like the worm style auger, and you can weld a little piece of pipe on it and stick just a stick through it, just a little piece of wood, and you've made your own T-handled auger. So if you're having trouble finding one of these things, there's different ways to do it. And if you really don't care about being super traditional, you can always use an electric drill. But I like to keep things very, very traditional. So hopefully that makes sense. Like I say, I wanted to just shorten this video down just a little bit, because using one of these T-handled augers takes some effort and time, but they do work. So I will come back with the final video and show you what it looks like when it's all made up and ready to be used. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.